Vashti, the queen who said no. Meet King Xerxes, ruler of 127 provinces. He threw a massive 180-day banquet to show off his immense wealth and glory in the capital city of Susa. On the final day, the king was drunk with wine. He commanded his 7 eunuchs to bring Queen Vashti before him, wearing her royal crown to display her beauty. But Queen Vashti was hosting her own banquet for the women. When the attendants delivered the king's order, she made a choice that changed everything. Queen Vashti refused to come. The king was furious. His advisors warned him that Vashti's defiance would set a dangerous precedent for all women in the kingdom, leading to disrespect and discord. So a royal decree was issued. Queen Vashti was permanently removed from the king's presence. Her royal position would be given to someone else who was better than she. Vashti chose her dignity over her crown. Her refusal became a legendary act of defiance, paving the way for the next queen, Esther. What do you think of Vashti's choice? Was she right to refuse? Let me know in the comments.
Before Hadassah ever stepped into the courts of Persia, a queen had already fallen. Queen Vashti refused the king's command, and in one night her crown vanished. A throne stood empty, and an empire began searching for a replacement. Advisors rushed to the king with a plan: gather the most beautiful virgins across the provinces, train them for a year, present them to the king. It sounded like opportunity, but to the women taken, it felt like captivity disguised as privilege. In the citadel of Susa lived a young orphaned girl named Hadassah, also called Esther. Raised by her cousin Mordecai, a Jewish exile living far from home. Her beauty was gentle, her presence quiet, yet she carried a destiny she could not see. When the king's decrees spread through the land, Esther was taken from Mordecai's home into the palace. Before she left, Mordecai gave one instruction: do not reveal your identity. Esther obeyed, though every part of her feared what lay ahead. Inside the harem whispered loudly. One wrong word could expose her. One misstep could cost her everything. She wondered, am I good enough? Will the king ever call my name? Yet she trusted Mordecai's wisdom, even when obedience felt like walking into uncertainty. Then came Haggai, the king's eunuch in charge of the women. He had seen ambition, pride, and jealousy, but when he saw Esther, something shifted. She pleased him not with charm alone, but with humility and grace. While the others demanded perfumes, jewels, and fine garments, Esther asked for nothing, nothing except what Haggai suggested. He gave her attendants, special food, and placed her in the best part of the harem. Her spirit, not her appearance, made her stand out. After 12 months of preparation, Esther's night came, the night that would decide her future. Other women entered the king's chamber shining like queens. Esther entered with simplicity and quiet strength. And the king looked at her and saw what he had never seen before. She won his favor. She won his approval, and she was crowned Queen of Persia. But the story did not end with a crown. Mordecai later uncovered a plot to assassinate the king. He sent word to Esther. She reported it, and the conspirators were caught. Mordecai's name was written in the royal chronicles, a detail that would shape the future. Esther remained silent about her identity, just as Mordecai instructed. She obeyed, even when the reason was unclear. An ordinary girl in an impossible place, chosen for an unimaginable purpose. But now the question turns to you. Would you have entered such a contest, knowing that failure meant being trapped forever in the harem, never again free to marry another man? And deeper still, if obedience to God placed you in a risky, uncomfortable position like Esther, would you trust him enough to stay there? The story continues, but your answer begins now. After Esther was crowned queen, the palace seemed calm. Halls glittered with gold, nobles feasted, and Mordecai returned to his watch at the king's gate. He had saved the king once, unnoticed, unrewarded. 2 officers plotted to assassinate Xerxes. Mordecai discovered the plan. He informed Esther. She relayed it to the king in Mordecai's name. The king was saved, but Mordecai received no reward, no recognition, no glory. And into that silence stepped Haman, a man whose heart was poised for vengeance. King Xerxes elevated Haman above all the princes. Every official bowed to him, except Mordecai. Haman expected obedience, but Mordecai refused. He would bow to the king, but not to Haman. Word reached Haman quickly. At first, a minor insult, but day after day, Mordecai remained standing, unmoved, unyielding, and the bloodline inside Haman stirred. Haman was not simply ambitious. He was an Agagite, a descendant of King Agag, the royal line of the Amalekites. Centuries ago, the Amalekites had attacked Israel. They struck the weak, the elderly, the helpless. Generations of hatred lived in his ancestry. And now a Jew stood in defiance. This was no longer a personal insult. It was history mocking him. Ancient revenge alive in the form of one man refusing to kneel. Haman's rage burned hotter than pride alone. It became a consuming fire. He decided that punishing Mordecai alone was not enough. If he could not crush Mordecai, he would destroy the entire Jewish people. He turned to the lot, to select the perfect day for genocide. But the held deeper meaning. It was not just chance, it was a spiritual declaration. Haman believed destiny bowed to him, but the God of Israel had already written the outcome, unseen. Haman approached King Xerxes. "There is a certain people," he said, "scattered across your provinces. Their laws are different. They do not obey your commands. It is not in your interest to tolerate them." He did not name them. He painted them as foreigners, rebels, threats. Then he offered wealth, 10,000 talents of silver, enough to fund their destruction. And the king gave Haman his signet ring, the symbol of life and death. With it, genocide became law. Scribes were summoned, letters were written, sealed. Riders mounted horses. Across the empire, from India to Kush, a decree arrived. Destroy, kill, annihilate all Jews, young and old, women and children, on a single day. The city of Susa trembled. Families wept. Children clung to parents. The elderly shook with fear. Haman sat beside the king, drinking. To him, this was strategy, revenge, justice. But Haman did not see the irony. The man he hated had once saved the king, unseen, unsung, and now stood in the path of annihilation. God was watching, and Esther, the hidden queen, would soon risk everything to stand in the gap. Every action Haman took was a step toward historical genocide. every decree a sentence over innocent lives. And before the night fell, a chilling thought lingers. If standing for what is right meant risking your life, your comfort, your position, would you obey? Even when everyone else bows, even when an entire empire supports evil, even if refusing could cost generations. The story continues, but the question now belongs to you.
My name is Esther, though to my people I am Hadassah. I never asked to be queen. I never dreamed of royal crowns or golden courts. It all began when the king dismissed Queen Vashti, and the search for a new queen began. I was taken, chosen, not because of confidence, but because of grace I did not understand. My cousin Mordecai told me to hide my identity, and I obeyed. For a while, it seemed peaceful, almost too peaceful. But then came Haman, a man whose hatred was older than any of us realized, an Agagite, a descendant of the Amalekites, those ancient enemies of my people. The old hostility that began in the wilderness still lived in his heart like a smoldering coal, waiting for wind. When Mordecai refused to bow before him, Haman did not just become angry, he became awakened to a hatred he had inherited from generations before him. Then he cast the the lot, and from that single act, a date was chosen, a date to erase my people from the earth. The decree spread across the empire like poison in water. Every Jewish household began to tremble, and Mordecai, my beloved relative, tore his clothes and mourned publicly. When I sent messengers to ask what troubled him, his answer shook me to my core. A genocide had been signed, sealed, approved under the king's authority, and I, Esther, was expected to intervene. But how? How do you walk into a throne room where uninvited guests are executed? How do you plead for a people whose fate already feels sealed? How do you challenge a king who does not even know you are among the condemned? I felt fear I never voiced to anyone. Fear that I could die before uttering a single word. Fear that the king's love for me had cooled. Fear that my silence had already cost too much time. Fear that the crown on my head was too heavy for the courage in my heart. But worst of all, I feared that I had been placed in this palace only to witness my people die. Yet Mordecai's message pierced me deeply. Who knows if you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? His words felt like a door I did not want to open, but could no longer avoid. I asked my people to fast for me. 3 days. No food, no water. In those days, silence grew louder than voices. My fears fought my faith. I questioned everything. What if God was silent? What if I failed? What if I succeeded, but still lost everything? What if my actions brought destruction sooner? But still, I prepared. And on the 3rd day, I stepped forward. My legs trembled. My heart hammered so violently I could hear it echo in my ears. But I walked, one step after another, toward life or death. When the king saw me, everything stopped. My breath, my heartbeat, my fear, time itself. And then he lifted the golden scepter. I lived. But the mission was not yet complete. The enemy still breathed, and the decree still stood like a sword above every Jewish household. I invited the king and Haman to a banquet. One banquet was not enough. I needed another. Not out of hesitation, but because my spirit sensed the moment was not yet ripe. Something unseen was shifting. A divine thread, pulling events into alignment. That night, the king could not sleep, and in that sleepless night,
the chronicles were read. For the first time, he remembered Mordecai's unrewarded heroism, the very man Haman wanted to hang. At that moment, destiny turned. The unseen hand of God moved where no human eye could see. The honor meant for Haman became Mordecai's, and the gallows meant for Mordecai was being built for the man who ordered them. At the second banquet, I finally spoke. My voice trembled, but it did not break. I revealed my identity. I pleaded for my life and the life of my people, and in that moment, the king's anger ignited, not at me, but at Haman. The truth shattered the room like glass. The mask fell from Haman's face. His scheme was exposed, his fear palpable, his fate sealed by the very king he had manipulated. Haman fell, but the decree lived on. Persian law could not be undone. So I begged again, not for my life, but for the right of my people to defend themselves. The king granted it. Letters were sent, hope rose, strength returned to my people, and on the appointed day, the day meant for our extermination, we stood, fought, and prevailed. What was meant to erase us became the day of our deliverance. And so Purim was born, a celebration not only of survival, but of identity, courage, and divine orchestration. I, Esther, once a hidden orphan, became a voice for a nation, not because I was fearless, but because faith fought my fear and won. And now, I ask you, if you were placed in a position of influence, but stepping forward might cost you everything, would you still speak? Would you risk your life to save those who could not save themselves?